All right, it is 6:30. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for March 18th, 2025. Nancy, can we have a roll call?
Yep. Ms. Austin?
Here.
Mr. Adams? Oh, okay, we'll come back. Ms. Hupka?
Present.
Mr. Montiel?
Present.
Stephen is absent, I believe. Let me check online real quick. Yep, Stephen's absent. Mr. Kaplan?
Here.
Mr. Renson?
Here.
Ms. Cesario?
Present.
We have a quorum present. I believe Mr. Adams is here, but we'll get him on the record when he returns. And Chair Martinez.
Present.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I would have given Carl a minute. I didn't notice that he had stepped out. All right, so approval of minutes that were contained in the agenda from the March 4th meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Can we have a vote, please?
Ms. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Hubka? Or excuse me, Ms. Hubka, I apologize. I was looking at Carl.
It's all good. Yes.
Mr. Montiel?
Abstain.
Mr. Kaplan?
Aye.
Mr. Renson?
Yes.
And Ms. Cesario?
Aye.
And Mr. Adams just entered the meeting. We're voting on the minutes from the last meeting. How do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you.
And I'm here.
And I vote aye as well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Sorry,
No,
Carl.
no,
I didn't
let's
see you
gotta do
step
this.
out. We would have waited for you. Sorry about that.
Chair Martinez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, approval of the findings of fact. I hope everybody got a chance to review. The finding of facts are related to the PUD that we discussed or that we heard at the last meeting, and it is a summary of all of the information that was presented. Did anybody, actually, let's get a motion first, then we can have discussion if anybody felt any changes or amendments to that. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thanks, Eric.
Second.
Thank you. Quick discussion. Anybody have any issues with the findings of fact? Additions, corrections? No? All right. Do a vote.
I do have a correction I just noticed.
Oh.
I have Ms. Cesario as both an A, as a yes and a no on the motion. Do you recall how you voted? I will double check that, but I will need to change that.
I think it was 4 nays.
You think what?
I think it was 4 nays.
3 nays, you mean?
Well, there's, oh, it is.
I have
listed
her
as
in
a
2
nay.
places.
I see it. Okay. 5-3.
Yes, so I will fix that. And
Okay. Pending
if
that.
you can approve as amended.
Yeah, pending that amendment, can I get a vote? Nancy, we already moved. We already have it on the table. We just need to do a vote of approval.
Can you just, Eric, can you just do a friendly amendment to approve as amended?
Oh, right.
Just a friendly amendment to, are you okay with amending them? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh. How do we fix this? Do we need to reopen it?
What's the motion on the table right now? A motion to approve?
Is to approve, but there is an amendment.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the
Somebody else
person
can get
who
the
made the
amendment.
amendment wasn't at the meeting. So
Yeah, someone needs to make a friendly amendment to amend, to correct the voting record.
I move to amend the findings of fact to correct the voting record and the spelling of member Cesario's name.
Ms. Austin, do you take that amendment?
Pardon?
I'm asking Michelle.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Okay, with that, thank you. I apologize. Ms. Austin,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Ms. Hupka,
Yes.
Mr. Montiel,
Abstain.
Mr. Kaplan,
Yes.
Mr. Renson,
Yes.
and Chair Martinez.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Now into the public forum. Do we have anybody here or anybody online signed up to speak?
We do not.
Thank you. All right, let's go on to the comprehensive plan update. Mr. Burrell.
Good evening, Planning and Zoning Commission. This evening, we're hoping that this is our final comprehensive plan update study session with you. Of course, we will invite you back for a joint study session with City Council when we have a draft document. But now, after tonight, we'll be kind of kicking it to Council's court and seeing how they react to these things. So tonight, we're going to be talking strategies. We're moving on from the policies to the strategies. So just a little bit about our current strategies in our existing plan. They really never worked very well. We occasionally had tried shortly after the adoption of the plan to work with council to develop work programs. And the way these strategies were written, they just seemed a little bit nebulous and a little bit vague, and really didn't light a fire under council at all. And it was sort of like pulling teeth going to the dentist. And we kind of stopped doing it, quite frankly. So we are proposing to kind of scrap all of the strategies in the comp plan that we have today and do something a lot different. And this time we're looking to develop something that's a lot more concrete and more project-based, that maybe they can understand and get behind, so we can have a more successful work program development. So just as an example, here's a policy from the existing plan: assist and facilitate home expansion and improvements that are compatible with the local neighborhood area. And that really just sounds a lot like one of the policies we've been reviewing. And so it just wasn't really all that helpful. All right, so as I was developing draft strategies, it occurred to me that something that would be very helpful would be to how can we tie the policies to the strategies. And it seemed like a no-brainer that what should be done is that in the policy section, for each policy, you should add a column that is supporting strategies and list them out. And so I'm hoping that that is a helpful way to connect them together. But if you have other ideas, I'd be glad to hear them as well. All right, so once we kind of had a comprehensive list of strategies, we felt that we've thought of everything that we could think of. But if obviously if you have other ideas, we'd love to hear them too. But anyway, so the next thing was to compile these into coherent groupings and give them initial priority rankings of 1, 2, or 3, with 1 representing the highest priority. And our different categories of strategies include small area plans, strategic plan implementation, these are strategic plans that already exist, that have been recently completed, and so it's really just carrying them out with different projects that do that. And then there's strategic plan development. These are strategic plans that we have not created yet, and that is those are things that are on our to-do list as well. And then there are critical infrastructure projects. These are typically high-profile infrastructure projects that are going to make a really big difference in the community. I would put the rail trail project as one of those types of projects. And then there's city center redevelopment. We've been working on that for a long time. Some really great things have happened recently where the game has changed a bit because we were able to facilitate a sale from Bank of America, represented by a bad real estate representative, to a more local firm here in town, and we've been able to facilitate that sale. And so we feel we're now in a better position to work with this local firm, as opposed to trying to work with Bank of America with their terrible representation. So let's talk about, I'll take each of these categories one by one. We're going to talk about what my PowerPoint has basically highlighted only what has been characterized as the top priority rankings. And so we'll talk about those. I'll explain why I think they probably should be thought of as the top ranking priorities. But also we are willing to listen to, we have the complete list of strategies. So if there's a difference of opinion by members of the commission, we'd like to hear that too. So we'll start off with small area plans. And so there's 3 different small area plan areas that I've picked out as the top priorities. One is the Inglewood Transit Station area overlay, particularly with infrastructure planning. So we know that Inglewood Parkway is kind of a mess. It's different on every block. And one section goes through a parking lot. Lot of problems. We want this to be our main pedestrian spine, and today most of it is very unattractive. That's going to cost a lot of money, but also a lot of effort and time in planning. And then another big project through this area is Little Dry Creek, and we've recently discovered that through a study from Urban Drainage that there's a lot more significant water volume that will come through here in a big flood. And so there's some questions about whether the current system, which includes that culvert, as well as upstream improvements, is that sufficient to handle that big flood? And then, of course, there's also been, for a long time, a vision we'd like to dig up the creek, and we'd like to have some kind of a linear parkway, stream, trail kind of thing going through this area as well. So that's a big infrastructure project too. So those are big issues out there that will shape how some of these areas redevelop.
Are you saying that it's not possible to pull the creek out of the channel that goes underground?
So there has been some studies, preliminary studies about this, and what the conclusions have come to is that there's not nearly enough land area on either side of the stream floodway to bring the entire thing to daylight, because in a flooding situation it would just inundate at least a block on either side. So it'd have to be this would have to be at least a half a block wide on either side. And so that's just not really possible in an urbanized area. So the vision right now is to be able to rely on the culvert, but be able to develop an above ground secondary channel that would be attractive to people. So that's kind of the direction that we are looking to go.
So you go upstream from Broadway 1 block, and you're in the open canal there. And basically, that handles the floods fine.
Well, for the most part, it has, but some of the modeling that they did shows that to not necessarily hold back all the water.
There's no way that the downstream is going to have more water than upstream. It's just, there will be a little bit more just from the rain, but you just go deeper. You go deeper in deeper trench.
Yes, so one of the alternatives might be a second culvert.
Well, you see at the surplus store there, you can see where the water comes up in the grass area there. So you've got an excellent measurement of the amount of water that's there, and basically a design for how to build it downstream. Right at the surplus store and upstream, two blocks there.
Well, the other thing you have to remind yourself is that this creek starts way, way south in Arapahoe County, and it can keep picking up water all through Cherry Hills and Greenwood Village. So they talk about that there might have to be, for instance, maybe some kind of storage impoundment at the corner of Clarkson and Jefferson, where the Episcopal Church was.
So the overflow at Clarkson, the baseball fields there, have they ever been flooded?
John, let's make sure we keep this really high level and we're not delving into a flood study specific to Little Dry Creek. What I will say is there was a presentation 2 Mondays ago to council by Mile High Flood District. We can get you all that information. I just don't want to go too far down that pathway and not be able to get to all the information tonight, because this is really citywide. We're trying to look at all of this, and I don't want to delve too far down into where Little Dry Creek floods, might not flood, or how high it gets, because we're really looking at big picture items with this. Okay.
I just see the flood level. It's very distinct in the grass. You know, the branches and dead weeds and stuff, they go up like 10 feet or so around the surplus store there. And it shows you exactly how much area you need. It's like the widest part is like from here to the screen over there. That's it. So,
all right, but that's probably not the 500-year flood.
So, that's like a 30-year flood.
Yeah.
As long as I've been here.
All right, let's talk about, I'll just mention a little bit about the Inglewood Station South. So this is the area south of Hampton and north of Kenyon, Broadway to Santa Fe. This area contains a lot of industrial area that's been industrial zone for a long time, based on the pre-existence of the Inglewood carnation industry, which was where greenhouses were located in this area. That industry has been long gone away, and there's almost no industrial areas here today, industrial uses. But there's a very interesting pressure for some housing. We've had 4 different PUDs there, so that's a high priority area to look at as well. And then finally, South Broadway, and there's a lot of a kind of a big push right now here in the city from up top that there wants to be some improvements to the streetscape on Broadway. Because that hasn't been touched since probably it was built. So obviously, you know that there's a big change when you move from the north side of the highway to the south side. The infrastructure looks much more older. It's much less. The sidewalks are skinnier. Everything is just kind of diminished. But also, and there hasn't been a lot of change in this area over time. I think there's a strong desire to see more change to the land uses here, more businesses, more housing. And then also, we've recently had a South Broadway bus rapid transit study for this corridor that is supposed to take place in the 2030s. So that will change the character of the district as well. And then, of course, we have the state legislation that tells us that for major bus rapid transit corridors, this needs to be part of a transit center, and you need to have a certain minimum density. So all of these things are coming into play with Broadway. And so that's why this has been elevated to a top priority. And so at this point, I'd like to step away and hear what the commission has to say on these proposed top priority small area plans.
John, do we have any existing or in recent history small area plans, and how do they complement or fit into the comp plan?
So our history basically has been we've had a downtown and medical district small area plan, and that was created in 2007 through quite an extensive public process. And then that led to the different rezonings that would take place in the wellness district, which has given us this very interesting commercial mixed-use zoning that facilitates the different developments of the hospitals, allowing them to build on the properties they already own, building up. And we've even had some very interesting residential developments come along that corridor as well. So it's been really very successful for the city.
I think, and I'm sure we'll talk about strategic plans next, but I'm just wondering, okay, that small area plans, how they fit in the middle between sort of the comp plan and what's called out for, and then, very, more narrow strategic plans. Just want to make sure there's room in the city our size for additional small area plans, if that's the best tool, or should it be maybe, these initiatives pushed down to sort of a strategic plan level? So that's my only question, and would be curious to hear kind of what the thinking has been and why small area plan would be the preferred choice.
So strategic plans are typically they look at the whole city together, and they're usually looking at one focus area. So one of the ones that I'll be mentioning here is that our Public Works Department wants to do a transportation plan. So they're just going to focus on, which is a pretty broad topic, but yeah, it's just going to be transportation related. They've been working for many years without any kind of plan like this. And I think they've kind of seen the light that, well, if we don't plan for ourselves, some other department's going to plan for them. So, yes. But when it comes to these rezoning things, they're so complicated and so granular that it makes really sense to just focus in on a small area and in a lot of detail. So that's kind of the difference.
I see. And so the strategic plans are really focused on a sector or a modality, like transportation or wastewater,
stormwater.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. No,
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. Thank you.
But these smaller plans are really the precursors that set you up for doing rezonings or zoning reforms.
Any other questions for John about small area plans? No? All right. Let's keep moving.
Okay, let's talk about strategic plans that we already have and that we need to implement. So We have the stormwater and water master plans that have been completed here in the last 5 years or so, and they have begun implementing some of this stuff. You probably have seen, if you ever down by Rotolo Park, they're building a new pipeline that will connect over to Windermere Street in this new stormwater storage area. So they're making a lot of improvements in that area to lessen the flood risk there, and they have plans to do similar things up in northeast Inglewood as well, because there's some problem areas there as well. Replacing aging pipes and increasing capacity. Then there's lots of aging parts and equipment at either at the water plant itself, or there's different valves that need to be replaced. And then another big initiative is that they're trying to replace all the lead service lines in the city, which I think is a high time that has happened. And I think they've gotten a lot of help from the federal government, and it's about time. That's my feeling. Another existing strategic plan is the walk and wheel plan, just focused on bicycle and pedestrian improvements throughout the entire city. So it fits in as a strategic type of plan. And so we've done a lot of good stuff there. We've got a lot of projects under our belt, and we'll be describing those in the comp plan update. But we also have quite a number of segments to keep going through. And then the downtown plan. This is more of a geographical plan, but it is kind of more of a strategic plan. It's really the plan that was set up for the Downtown Development Authority. This was kind of the thing that we got people excited about, so that they would vote for a Downtown Development Authority. So the downtown plan calls for more residents, jobs, entertainment, a distinct, authentic brand, street-level activation, a connected and multimodal and safe and accessible environment, collaboration with the businesses community to enhance vitality, safety and comfort, and infill development. And recently, sustainability has become big in the city. Originally, for many years, Inglewood had a Keep Inglewood Beautiful commission, but as the city became, as these sustainability issues became more sophisticated, and there was more of a different yearning to do things in this realm at a higher level than Keep Inglewood Beautiful, the commission was transitioned to the Sustainability Commission. And so they have a bit different focus. And so they have developed a sustainability strategic plan as well, focused on these different things: built environment and infrastructure, water protection, waste and recycling, business and green workforce, air quality education, climate action, energy and natural environment. And we have added some of these policies that are in there into our comp plan. And they are busy working on many of these areas right now. And then here also in community development, we have we house our economic development division, which is Darren Hollingsworth, basically. He's our economic development director. And this plan was done to give direction to that business focus of the department. So we focus also on business recruitment and marketing, business support and retention, and place-based development primarily. And I think this is the last one for strategic plans, wayfinding and placemaking plan. This was spearheaded by the city manager. So he was really focused on this, and he wanted to do this, and he found some money in his department to do a wayfinding placemaking plan to kind of give some more coherence to how things look on the street with improvements, signage, furnishings, and art. And so that was completed in February of 2021. I think we're going to see maybe haven't seen it as much as we would like to see so far, but I think in the old Hampton streetscape, we're going to start seeing some stuff coming out of that. All right. Yes. So at that point, these are the strategic plan that we are trying to implement. Is there any comments or discussion from commission members on these initiatives?
Hey, for tonight, just feel free to jump. Don't wait for me to call it. Just go.
So that's 7 strategic plans that are priority 1. And I'm just curious how that works. So, you know, if the, so, you know, let's take the walk and wheel plan, for example. Like from the original walk and wheel plan to the update of the walk and wheel plan, there was a lot more that was not yet done from the original sort of goals than was done. You know, it's been sort of just chipped away at a little bit. So what does that mean that it's now a, you know, priority 1 if it's also in the same list with all these other things that are also priority 1? Like, how do you envision the city sort of focusing on that many things at the same time?
Yes, there is a limitation to what the city, you know, how much staff you've got, how much staff time you've got. You know, that's really hard to say. I'm pretty pleased with where our Public Works Department is going. They recognize this pretty strongly, that there's this desire and willingness to pay for some of these things, and City Council has stepped up and actually put in line items for monies that was never a thing before. We had to always go scrounge for the money to do these projects, but now there's actually funds that are just earmarked for that. So that's big, really big, and so I think and then, you know, it used to be that community development was really pushing a lot of this stuff, was really kind of more the team that pushed, got money, and then the Public Works had to come along with it. But I don't sense that now. I think now Public Works is really running with these things now themselves. So it is a change. But yes, these things you know, depending on what council's main priorities are, they're going to have to make choices. And then there's the department directors going to have to make choices. So citizens that are interested in certain priorities have to kind of make sure the pressure you keep the pressure on.
Can I add something to that? One of the things that we're doing with these priorities is making sure, or the policies and then the strategies is farming them out to all the different departments that would be affected. The last thing that we want to do is put something in place that somebody else says, nah, we don't mind. So we are working on that right now to make sure that we have buy-in from all of our other departments on these strategies. And in some of these, I was a little focused on the lights going on and off. Money is a big issue for us. You guys get to look at the capital improvement plan list every year. And every year, not every single project is funded. So a lot of things like with the multimodal plans or our walking wheel plan, we put it in place so that if and when development happens, we can pin some of that on the development community and say, nope, we want this too. This is in our plan. We have to have things like that in our plans for us to require them to be built and constructed by the development community. If we didn't have that plan, we would have no bike lanes built by our developers when they build new projects. So there are ways that we do it. A lot of it really is we are chipping away a little bit at a time. But unless somebody just has a generous uncle that wanted to give us tons of money that we could do all these projects, I mean, that's our biggest constraint in the city is money and how much we have that we need to fix and need to work on. But trust us, we're trying our best to get there.
Yeah, I think the point of the question, I guess, is really around like knowing that that's the case. How does having all of these strategic plans at level 1 help to make those decisions when it comes time to say, with our limited funds, which of these 7 plans or what in these 7 plans is the most important and is going to get that money first, right? That I think is kind of where I was going with the question.
And honestly, I think that's going to depend on each person. I mean, I can gather just from speaking to you have an eye on transportation. Someone else may have an eye on parks and push for that. And that's why that process for capital improvements is written the way it's written, to really try to get as much buy-in, to understand. Otherwise, it would just be one person saying, well, we'll do this today, we'll do that tomorrow. So we get a lot of public buy-in from our commission, and I don't think this is the only commission that weighs in on those projects. But it is tough. And the funny thing, I've worked in 3 different cities. The more money you have, the more projects you have waiting for money. So even if we had the funding to do everything, there'd be more projects finding their way in and more plans we work on to try to find others.
And the other thing I would say about these strategic plans we've went through is that they're not all the same. Some of them are really huge money, like the sewer and the water ones are huge. The wayfinding and placemaking and the sustainability plan are relatively low cost stuff. And so, most likely they can go forward just fine. But then when it comes, and then, the walk and wheel compared to the wastewater and stormwater is much lower cost. And hopefully we can, that helps that area in our favor. And more, I think there is potentials. We've done that in the past. We've gone after grants, but also it's a welcome that there is now earmarked money.
So, Brian, here we go again. Just to follow up on what you were saying, this is not something that's going to be formalized and put in zoning or anything like that. It's just a plan that when one of those car lots along Broadway is, sold and somebody wants to redevelop it, it's something that it's a bargaining chip, basically, is what you're saying with the developers, or?
So like the strategic plans, I think it works in different ways. So the wayfinding and placemaking plan, our communications department really runs with that. You'll see those small neighborhood signs.
Right.
Getting deployed all over our community. That's really their pet project. Darren Hollingsworth really runs with the, John, I know you know the name of it, the Economic Development
Enterprise Zone?
Strategic Planning. So Darren really runs with the Economic Development Strategic Planning.
So it's a combination of city staff and different departments working together, as well as developers coming in, and you say, this is kind of what we want, because I think you said something
in
about
some instances where we might have like the walk and wheel plan, where we map out like bike lanes or other things like what they should look like, how they should be built, or other types of infrastructure like water or sewer lines, or even if the city had a transportation plan that says here's what these intersections should look like in 30 years. We use those as city employees when we're reviewing new development to say, we have this in our plan, this in our plan, this in our plan. You must now build that, or a portion of it, or escrow funds so that we can build it later, because you are now affecting all of these items. So if we didn't have any of that stuff, we'd be in a position probably much like we are today, where we're a little bit behind the curve on a lot of things, and we're trying to get caught back up.
Well, and I recall some of the PUDs that have come through, there's been like a contribution to the rail trail or, Dartmouth Bridge or whatever the kind of things are.
And that's where those things come from. But we have to have those things in plans so that we can point back to something and say, you have to do this, you have to help with this, you have to work on this.
Yeah, and
otherwise it would be just meet our code and go forth.
And some of these are really localized, like along Broadway, but some of the districts that we just at the very end, the Brookridge and those are really large, so they really wouldn't impact much development there.
If you think about the public hearing that we just had and the conversations that you all were having about looking at the comprehensive plan, and how difficult it is. Well, this comprehensive plan is painting the city with a 30,000-foot brush. We really don't have the bandwidth to go into super detail on every single parcel. These
Well, that's a
strategic
good thing, I
plans,
think.
the small area plans that John was talking about, does give us the bandwidth to go in and look at each individual parcel and say, what really is, the highest and best use? Where can we go? So even as you look through those, there may be some differentiation between the comprehensive plan and those small area plans. But the small area plans are usually what we'll start to reflect more if there is a difference, because they're really drilled down in specific areas. So we use all these as different tools for us to help provide you the best information so that you can make the best possible recommendation to
Great.
council, and council can make their best decision.
Yeah, thank you. That helps. I was just trying to balance the property rights versus the whole plan and that sort of thing. So that helps me.
You mentioned infrastructure is going to be a lot of work, digging up pipes and whatever. So isn't there a rule that the developer, if the developer's development is over the size of the sewer line, water lines, storm drain line, they have to fix it to bring it up to what is needed for their project?
Brian will answer that.
So yes, if a water line or sewer line is undersized for a new project, it's generally up to the developer to build to upsize those water lines or sewer lines to a certain extent. They wouldn't make you do the entire neighborhood, but they will make you focus on what is needed for your project.
So if they build a 2,000 unit apartment building and the water line is too small, do they have to run a water line back to the water system treatment plant?
I am by no means a utilities engineer, and every project is different. And I see Vicky's getting ready to push her button, so I'll let her.
Thank you. I'm also not an engineer nor work in utilities, but I do know that there are specification requirements for different pipe sizes. So there have been times where upsizing has been required.
I have a question about prioritization, kind of similar to what Noah was getting at. If everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority, right? But my specific question is, first off, how are these priorities established? Who picked the numbers, or how did we come to these numbers? And then on the back end, how have these been used in the past for reporting or performance? How have these actually come into everyday use in city staff offices? Have we had that history of these are guiding principles? And I'm just curious about how this actually relates to prioritizing daily work of departments. So first part was, how did we come to those priorities? And then second part is, how do they actually get implemented?
Well, in the past, as I was relating the early part of the presentation, is that before that, let's go back to the 2003 comprehensive plan. There was really no necessarily, it was just, this area might be good for redevelopment. This might be really good for redevelopment. This has potential over here. And that was the extent of it, really. And then, we went to council and, kind of showed them a lot of different areas of town. And then they kind of focused, well, we see a lot of interesting areas over there in the medical district that are just moribund, and what we want to focus there. And that's kind of how we got to our small area planning process, the backing for that. And then afterwards, in this last comprehensive plan, they tried to develop a more formal way of going about that in terms of developing a list of strategies that could be presented to council and have them choose what their priorities are. So probably in that plan, there wasn't really a prioritization. It was just sort of like, listen to what council says, what are you hearing from them, choose priorities from here that match that. And it really didn't work very well. And so I have to be honest with you, I prioritize these. And how did I come up with them? Some of it is some of the pressure. The Broadway is coming from the top of the city. So I've put that that's something that we're starting to feel pressure in our department to do. And so that one was big. But then some of them are the ones that we've been trying to work on and are going to make the biggest bang in the buck for the city, which is the city center is the biggest bang for our buck that we could do. If we could change that, that's the biggest thing that we could do in the city. And we've already been working on it for X amount of years. So we better keep working on it. Otherwise, we wasted a lot of time. So that was no brainer to be first priority. And then, what's going on south of the station, it's like, that's just never made sense for many years. It's this industrial area that isn't industrial anymore and wants to be transit-oriented development. So those are what I rated number one. The wellness district is doing fine. We don't really someday we'll probably want to revisit that, but it's not the highest priority right now. So that's kind of the reasoning and why those were chosen as number one. But obviously, that is just the first round that staff chose. And so, you have input here. So I want to make sure that you know that. And so we are listening if there's another direction that people want to go. And we'll see what council says as well.
No, I really do appreciate essentially putting yourself out there to putting some priorities to this to kind of force the issue, because if we hadn't had this, or if we haven't had this in the past, this is certainly what's needed when we come to do our capital planning in a few weeks or whatever that is, like to have something like this to help guide rather than just, I really like this project over that project, something to fall back to as sort of the guiding principle. So I appreciate your willingness to do that.
Yeah, I think if I was to just give the list of strategies to council, it would be without any, nuance or explanation or description or even, a recommendation, they would struggle mightily for many meetings. So you have to kind of give some idea and thought to it to give them a little bit of a structure. And then they can adjust up and down.
Has there been a chance for city staff of various expertise and different perspectives to, have a staff sort of ranking of these priorities? Because I think you guys are so much more in touch with it. It'd be interesting to see what you guys think first, because I think even reading it now, it still feels fairly broad and hard to narrow down what those priorities are. So I'm looking for sort of additional pointers as to why would something be a priority over something else? Is there some way to, you've got this color
articulate
code.
That? To articulate why?
Well, I think it'd be helpful to hear the city staff's perspective on these things, because maybe you guys have a better insight in terms of, I'm looking at like the action priority matrix with the colors, like if those colors were associated with each of these different tasks or small area plans or strategic plan implementation, it might be helpful for us to understand, okay, this is a, no-brainer because it's cheap and relatively easy, or is this a huge undertaking and taking this one thing on is going to knock out X, Y, and Z? I think right now it still feels a little too broad to analyze comfortably, if that makes sense.
Well, thank you for that. We do need to still, as we mentioned in the staff report, we still need to kind of do some truth smithing with are these good? Are these other departments on board? So we have not done that yet.
Maybe one other thought that's coming to mind is, I think when I'm reading individual, so for example, small area plans, light rail stations, infrastructure planning, industrial rezoning, is pretty vague. I get the general idea that these things need to be figured out, but I wonder if there's a way to help you prioritize, would be for staff to provide a bit more detail about what are the ideas that you think would actually be actionable items within these tasks. So we can say, all right, industrial rezoning, that is a task in and of itself. Infrastructure planning is a concept, it's not a task. So I guess, for example, if you could say the infrastructure planning for this area involves widening a street, changing a street, changing water lines. I think seeing a sort of 5-sentence, 5-bullet point things of these are what we're going to do for these tasks would be helpful to analyze it further.
Okay. Well, we will take that into account, especially as we go forward.
Brenda, then Carl.
Yeah, I think some people on this board might be enlightened when we go to do the capital budget. It's different, it's separate. And in fact, I'll ask you, John, I'll remind you that last year, our focus was on safety for the capital budget. And then we had these projects within that capital budget to decide. And we had a metric, and maybe that's what this board was kind of hoping for in guiding you. But I do think that when we come to do the budget I think that's next month, right? This board will get a real idea of what it really looks like in paper and on money. And we'll be able to say, okay, here's our Walk on Wheels plan. Can we give all our money to that? Can we move it up in rank? Can we move it down? And unfortunately, the comp plan, though, won't be passed, I don't believe, in time for this budget. So we won't see any of these projects that we're about to budget for 2026. But we will, if all goes to plan, and once you talk to the other department, maybe we'll see some of these projects come to surface. Would you agree? And is that the overall plan? Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree. But for some of the ones that I've already have talked about, these are already in place. These strategic plans that we have, and they are already following them. So they are planning for these. That there are recommendations of how they should proceed in many of these plans, and so they already probably have some of these capital improvements already listed in your capital improvements program that you'll be going through. Not all of them, but many of them will, especially the stormwater and the water one. Yeah.
The city center, the new Inglewood area is 15 acres or so. And the city center is another 2 acres. So to keep the developer happy, we got to give them the extra 2 acres of the city center.
The civic center, you mean? This building here?
This building, yeah.
That's not been decided. Really where that comes from, the idea of removing this building is that, number one, it is situated in such a way that it is hard to build around because it's a cockeyed kind of position. And the second one is that it's a really large building and it's kind of expensive. It's expensive to heat and cool this building and keep it maintained. And there's been thought of, well, how could the city be more efficient in that regard?
So do we have a square footage of this building that we're using, and how much of that is going to be cut to go to 24-hour fitness? I mean, you got the library downstairs, you got the courthouse, you got this room here, the community room, the Inglewood History Museum, the churches, they're on Sunday in the hall, and in the hall they have concerts over there, and then the third floor is all the offices and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
No,
what's
not
gonna
all
be
of that
cut?
will fit into the 24-hour fitness building, and so some of those things would have to move to another site.
And I
Which
think we're
is
getting
where?
a bit into the weeds again
Yeah,
here.
we don't know. None of this has been even. It's just a concept. It's just an idea out there. It hasn't been explored yet.
Giving this building to a developer is not a concept. That's been around for 5 years. That's been going on forever. And I mean, the building being cockeyed, it does make me dizzy sitting here. But it's a usable space. We can bring more things in to use the empty space. If it's needed.
Carl, with due respect, I think there's some other venues that are probably better suited for discussion on City Center, for the details or for the specifics. We should probably get back to comp plan updates. Can we do that, John? Thank you.
I don't think developers need to tell us what to do. We don't, our job isn't to make the developer happy.
Well, thank you for that. And I sympathize with you to some extent. I think there's a lot of opportunity with this building that I think could be used as well. But we'll have to see how that all shakes out. It's not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination, and council will make the ultimate decisions on those things.
So to remove this building, the second-story concrete parking lot will be paid for by who to remove it? City?
We don't know all the
we don't know
details
because the
to all of
contract
the
hasn't been-
contracts that would go with the city center redevelopment, and that is not the topic for tonight. So let's get back into the comp
Yeah,
plan
I'd like
discussion.
to get back to.
Because it's getting way too detailed for either John or I to be able to answer and give you good answers.
That's a concept plan to me.
Sure.
Yeah, but deal hasn't been negotiated yet.
This idea has been around forever. I don't understand why people are, I can agree that this is prime property right here, the light rail's right here, but light rail is hardly even used anymore. I mean, in the daytime, the parking lot out there has 20 cars in it. It used to be jam-packed full, completely full. I mean, my daughter was using it to go downtown to school, and she used to park it in the Walmart parking lot over here because it was just always full here. And now there's 20 cars in there. So light rail is not a real issue anymore.
Do we have is there a scheduled study session on Civic Center specifically that is coming up? Is there some other event, some open house, anything coming up
The
to
most
get into the
recent
details?
one was March 3rd. I put that link in here
Okay.
to send you all, along with the link to the flood study that was presented to council. So we'll get both of those to you after tonight's meeting.
All right, thank you. Let's get back to any other comments on strategic plan implementation. The strategic plans that are listed here. I'm looking at the chart on page 21 of the packet. Anything further for John on those? All right, let's keep going. Thank you.
All right, let's move to strategic plans not yet created. So there are strategic plans that we still need to work on to develop. And the first one is the transit-oriented communities. This is something that was passed in the legislature last year. And so you may have remembered that originally the legislature and the governor wanted to just throw a blanket over the city and say every place can do X amount of units anywhere, and no matter what zone it is, what city it is, wherever. And that was pushed back and was defeated. And so they've come back and said, okay, well, they've been chastened a bit, and so now they've focused, okay, let's go more to a rational location system, which focuses on transit as the place where we need to incorporate more housing potential capacity. And so now they're focusing on light rail stations. They're focusing on bus rapid transit corridors and other significant bus corridors that have enough headways, like 15-minute headways. And those are designated as you must calculate a housing opportunity goal, and then your community has quite a bit of wherewithal to identify what you want to identify as your the boundaries of your transit center based on certain density rules, and you can adjust your density to meet those things. And so that's something that we want to start working on. We have quite a bit of time to do it. We don't really have to have this finalized till the end of next year. But we probably want to start working on this immediately after the comp plan update. And so some of the things that we're going to need to think about in this process as to whether we want to consider including exempting city center parcels. City center parcels are owned by the city of Inglewood, and because it's a government, it has been exempted by the law. But does that make sense, really, in this terms, because we've always been envisioning it as a high density place. So it probably doesn't make sense for us to exempt those. Then we need to consider whether we want to exempt industrial parcels, include exempt industrial parcels. Industrial parcels have been made exempt, but you can, by the bill, decide not to exempt them. And we have, of course, the area south of 285 that is industrial. We need to consider the possibility of incrementally increasing densities in some areas. And we also can consider including optional corridors. So the South Broadway corridor from 285 to the South City limits is not included in this legislation at this time. But if the bus rapid transit corridor comes to light, it will become part of that. And so we think it probably makes sense to consider it now. And then finally, we have the Old Hampton corridor, which the city has been committed to for a long time via transit, via the shuttle system. And we have lots of high density along there. We've been very committed to connecting that density to the light rail station. And so it may make sense to optionally include that as well. Transit district study. This is something that Dan Premba and I have talked about. And this is something that's been tried up in Boulder, and Boulder has been pretty successful with it. They've created certain transit districts in centralized parts of Boulder where everyone gets a pass to ride transit. And so we thought, well, gee, what if we could do that for a certain section of our city that's well connected to transit? That could really change the story, be a game changer, really increase transit usage. And so we would like to do a study on that to see potentially how that could be funded. And then something else just to add on to that is that Dan and I have discussed the possibility of we have this BERT shuttle that's like, it's a fixed route shuttle from one place to another. It doesn't ever go off of there. The new thing today is these microtransit services that are on call that go wherever you call them up, and they come to you and take you to where you want to go, and they're on call. And so we're, in our minds, we're thinking about how that could happen in Inglewood, where we could add a service like that.
Are you talking about a paid service or free service?
That's unknown, I guess, at this time. we haven't started on studying that, but you know, it would. I think just my opinion that, you know, this is going to be quite a more service to you. If you can come, they're going to come to get you and take you where you want to go. You might be willing to pay something for that.
I guess
In the one city that I worked in with something like that, it was a subscription-based service. So you'd pay for like a day, a week, a month, and then you could ride it back and forth as much as you wanted. It started in a very small area, and this was in Arlington, Texas, and then it grew, I think, since then citywide. It's a very interesting concept, and their vehicles were branded. That's all I really know about it, but I thought I'd throw what little knowledge.
Fair enough. I think I'd be curious to know a little bit more about that idea, because I think in concept, the EcoPass or something like that makes a lot of sense if there's demonstrated, you know, demand for it. But throwing money at something that's essentially competing with Uber and Lyft, for most of people, I don't think most people are gonna, even if it is lower cost, you're battling against trying to convince people to not use a service that already exists. And so I'd be curious on, like, how is that practical in such a small city? Like, who is it servicing? Is this something that's focused on, you know, the elderly or disabled folks that need this assistance, as opposed to an able-bodied, financially, you know, stable person? Like, how do you make sure you're not wasting city funds on, you know, 30-year-olds going to bars?
Okay, well, thank you for that. That will keep that in mind. Especially we are committed to working with Arapahoe County on a microtransit and micromobility plan it's been delayed for quite a bit of time, but I heard yesterday that it should start getting going in May. So those are questions that hopefully that study will answer for us.
And I'd just like to say that the transit area study, you know, the whole reason why there's nobody that's parking and going on the light rail these days is because they took away the C line. I think that's what it is, that would go straight down to Union Station. So a lot of our population that would be coming through the whole transit area has really depended on that. And once RTD got rid of that, because it's only the D line that's serviced here now, and that takes you to, I don't know, someplace. Well, yeah, but it's you want to go to Union Station because that's where you want to go. I mean, that's the other transit hub, not to be dropped somewhere in downtown. But anyway, so I'm just cautioning that, you know, we're at the mercy of RTD is what I just want to say about that. So you have to include that in your study, I think.
Yeah, you've been talking about Broadway corridor having a bus route going up and down there, which I think they do already. But anyway, I think that's a good idea. But the trolley needs to be. I've ridden a trolley from the light rail station all the way around, and I never picked up a person. Never, nobody for the whole lap of it. But if it was a little better, I mean, a lot of it's overlapping. They come back on the same route they go out on, and that should be eliminated. But they should have a bigger loop, and maybe more often, timing a little more frequent.
Well, thank you for that too. I will keep that in mind as we go forward with the Arapahoe County study as well.
I think it's funded by
I had another question on the idea of including exempt industrial parcels in the plan. Is it possible that you guys could think about a way that an existing industrial parcel doesn't get negatively impacted in a way that it gets overthrown, but that like last session, if you have a rezone to something, that the rules automatically apply based on the zone, just so that I'm just thinking of some, smart developer comes in and buys some, industrial property that's exempt, comes up with a plan, then suddenly, they change zoning. If it's exempt by the parcel as opposed to exempt by the zone as well, is there some way to prevent something like that?
I would think that reading through the legislation, I don't think they're going to give you that kind of level of flexibility, and I think you're going to have to say one way or the other.
The light rail system is very good. I mean, like I said, it used to be jam-packed, the parking lot, but anymore it's nothing there. A lot of that is safety.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that won't ride the light rail because they're just scared to. They fear for their safety. So until you fix that, the light rail is not going to be worthless.
Oh, I just want to say, I think it's a good idea to do a study. We can, I hope it will focus on where people are walking. For instance, if we're not taking the light rail, we're still going shopping at the Walmart and this industrial area, the Southampton area, we're going to build that out. So I hope that a study then might lead to a discussion of this, of the Burt Loop, right? We used to have a loop, by the way, in the 70s, found out. But I hope it would then include picking up riders or using an eco-pass for the people who live in all these apartments and then take them shopping. So anyway, I think that study sounds great, and anything that could get us towards a loop, I think might get some more riders. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's 2 of the strategic plans to develop. Any questions on any other questions on those 2? I think we got to keep moving for the sake of time. No, let's go.
All right, housing action plan. So as you may know, that the Affordable Housing Task Force wrapped up, and they had a big task where they had to look very globally at the whole affordable housing universe, and which has many facets to it. It's pretty fascinating and pretty complex. And they obviously could not, drill down to very super detailed recommendations, but they were able to make some good broader recommendations of where council should go next. And obviously there's still a lot of work to be done to figure out things, especially like, one of the things was like, look at a variety of different funding sources that you could use to fund your affordable housing fund, your specific funding for that. So that's something that still needs to, going to have to still look at all those different possibilities. And so we, talking together with staff and the city manager, we felt that we really would probably need a housing action plan to help us do that. And there is funding for these things. Our housing needs assessment funding came from the state, from the Department of Local Affairs, and they also have, they're also funding these housing action plans. And so we are very interested in this potential of going after this year. So we want to explore funding sources for Affordable Housing Fund, and the other big thing that's out there is to investigate potential inclusionary zoning regulations, and then also just the geographic of where in the city do you want to pursue these things? Do you want to concentrate these efforts in certain parts of the city as opposed to others? And that hasn't been discussed either. So that's kind of the impetus for the housing action plan.
I think this is great. I think there was sort of an unspoken expectation from some people that the housing task force that's what they were going to end up with, is a housing action plan, with specifics. But yeah, this is a logical next step I think makes a lot of sense. Any other questions on or comments to add to about the housing action? Carl.
I don't really know anything about Section 8 or subsidized funding to bring housing costs down, but in my mind, the way you have affordable housing is you start out cheap. Modular houses are very, very inexpensive to build, and they're very nice houses. And if you did in a nice area, like, I don't know where, in an industrial area maybe. Get an industrial area, get maybe 15 acres or something, and put about 50 modular houses in there. And put them on small lots so you're not paying a lot of taxes. The house is cheap and the maintenance is very cheap on them. So that's affordable to me. So.
I think we're good. Let's go to the next one.
All right, and I think I've already mentioned this one, that Public Works wants to do a transportation plan, and I believe that will be kicking off here pretty soon, maybe within a few months. And I'm sure they're going to look at all these things: roadway, transit, bicycle, pedestrian, emerging modes. And this will help them develop policies, identify projects, and create timed action plans, which they have not had for many years, and they've just been kind of flying by the seat of their pants. Whenever some money comes up, there's some kind of program that, oh, there's a safety program there, let's go apply for that. So, but now they're gonna actually do some real planning behind the scenes and create a more of a coherent strategy for themselves.
So how does that relate to the walk and wheel plan? Is it, do they inform each other, or is the plan to sort of supplant the walk and wheel plan with something new that's broader?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really say because I'm not in Public Works.
Totally fair.
I know that they're wanting to do this, and so, but I'll be watching them closely.
I trust you.
All right, let's jump into infrastructure projects. So some of the key infrastructure projects that are hanging out there, there's the rail trail parallel to the light rail line featuring 3 pedestrian bridges. This was identified originally in the stationary master plan from 2013. And we're finally there 12 years later. We're about knocking on the door to build a bridge there at Oxford Avenue. And they are currently working with consultants to design the rest of the system. So it is moving forward.
Is there any part of the section between Oxford and Big Dry Creek, basically the south end of the light rail or the trail, is there any part of that done or started?
No.
So we have no rail trail.
We'd have no rail trail at this time. Maybe by the end of this year, we'll have a bridge.
I have a question about the bridge along Hamden. This is probably getting into little details, but if you cross over Santa Fe on a bridge, you still have to go past the half cloverleaf and then another couple blocks and then across the river. So right now if it's just a bridge over Santa Fe, it's a bridge to nowhere because you still are asking people to go quite a ways. Is that bridge development plan going to include an actual connection to the trail as opposed to ending as soon as you cross the road?
All right. So there is a project like that was identified in the stationary master plan, but it is such a long-range project that's not really what I'm necessarily talking about here. There is a concept of doing a project there with a bridge over Santa Fe, but this project here is all on the east side of Santa Fe and the light rail line. It's crossing Hampton. Yes, the map is tipped, so up is west. That's how I could fit the whole thing on the slide.
I mean, this one's already out of the stable, right? There's not much input to give on this. So let's go.
I just have a question on that. On the bridges, will they be, the bridges have similar looks as far as like an Inglewood look, or will they be neighborhood? Does that make sense what I'm asking you?
Can you be more specific?
Well, so when you're riding the light rail and you're like watching to see what your next stop is, I'm wondering if all four will look similar so that everybody knows that each time they stop, they're in Inglewood, or if each bridge, or I shouldn't say stop, but as they're going through, if they'll know that those four are Inglewood, or if
consistent
they'll
look.
be more neighborhood looking.
Oh,
More of a branding question, but just out of curiosity, going back to that other section of signage and.
I don't really know.
Okay.
But that's something maybe I should ask if that's part of if their vision or not.
And there was a recent update at council as to I think it was the Oxford Bridge, where they actually showed some design plans. We'll include that link in our email to you all so that you can take a look at it. I don't know that they've really gotten that far with the other two. I just know that's the one specifically that they've got designs for, and I'll include that.
Inglewood Parkway. This is a big one too that I had previously mentioned, and we did some visioning concepts recently in the last couple years with OV Consulting and Dig Studio to come up with kind of a preferred vision for Inglewood Parkway, and this is the vision concept. Kind of lays out the different sizes of the different elements of the streetscape. So this is something that needs further refinement and more details, and we will have to talk to Walmart so we can get them on board. So there's a lot of work there too. And then there's that little Dry Creek Greenway. There's this real desire in the community to have a greenway with more of a daylighted option for the creek. And this was also done with OV Consulting as well. This concept, as you can see there at the bottom, down here is the kind of the plaza fountain there where goes into the ground, and then this is the Inglewood Marketplace. This is how a concept of how that might be redeveloped with this greenway going through there, and then it finds its way up Cherokee and then around on Floyd.
Looks great. Better than a parking lot.
All right, so now we'll move into city center redevelopment tasks. And maybe this should have been the first part of this presentation. I might start with this with council actually. So city center, of course, we still have a lot of work to do to get this, to make this happen. First off, we've got to do a RTD parking agreement and a shared parking plan. We need a formal agreement with RTD to reduce the total park and ride parking by half to accommodate higher density residential development. So we want to reduce the footprint, the RTD park and ride footprint by 50%.
Is there any risk of that becoming, shooting ourselves in the foot? Because I know the light rail ridership is down right now, but it's really going to be down if there's more demand later and no parking.
Well, if you don't provide it, maybe they won't come. So they might have to come somewhere else in the system.
I mean, I think that's part of the issue, though. Is, I mean, last mile transportation is a huge issue everywhere, and in Colorado, it's very car centric. But even where I live, it is biking distance to the light rail, but I would never bike there as a commuter. And so, if I were working downtown, if there's suddenly no parking spaces because there's a giant apartment building, like why wouldn't the apartment building provide their own parking separate from RTD's plan?
Well, we want to be as efficient with parking as possible. If everything has to provide its own supply of parking, it'll just make everything cost a lot more. And so we would, obviously, even today here, we have a shared parking concept, but we think we could probably do it better than it is today. And I would have to say there is a risk about reducing the parking, but it's interesting, the history of Inglewood. Inglewood in Fast Tracks, they promised Inglewood more parking, and then they gave us a concept, and then the neighborhood said, we don't like that. And the concept was to take the existing park and ride to the north of here and build a kind of a structure farther north over the where that creek is. They've extended that way, and the neighborhood hated it, and that made a sea change with the city. City is no longer interested in park and ride parking. They don't see any benefit to the city, and so that's kind of how we're heading. And we think if we can develop things and bring more people here that live here, we'll be better off.
How many total spots would that eliminate if we were to get rid of 50% of the park and ride?
I think that we have about 900 some spaces, so I'm guessing we would still provide 450.
Well, and I assume that the negotiations on this building and this property and everything else are going to factor into this, because a lot of your parking, isn't it part of what's potentially under contract?
Yes, some of the RTD parking is here in this area where we'd like to redevelop.
Right, the parking garage basically kind of thing is part of that. So that's probably the largest part of your parking for RTD share, right?
I actually think the north lot is the bigger share.
Really? Okay. Interesting. Okay, thanks.
Are you familiar with the parking at the Coloradan across from Union Station and how that works with the homeowners?
I am not.
Okay, so at the Coloradan is a 343 unit condo building. The homeowners don't own their parking spaces. They lease it month to month, because when they built that building, they thought that by year whatever, there would be fewer cars downtown. So that parking garage was actually built to be turned into retail space in 15 or 20 years, whatever it is. So the parking is owned by a third party, and the homeowners can lease their parking spaces, one or two, depending on what type of unit they live in. But it also has public parking in there. So
yeah, it's complicated, but
it's complicated, but
that's where we have to go.
It very forward thinking, and it was very hard. It's 5 years in now, and it's still sometimes hard for people to understand. But again, I think the more that there is that transitionary parking, the easier it will be to understand in 20 years when maybe we don't have as many cars. I don't know. But
yeah, flexibility is a really good strategy, because there's so many unknowns. We also need to probably look at street bus circulation in the area, modifications to the street grid to enhance circulation and potentially reconfigure the bus passenger area based on, how the development plan transitions or develops. We may have to, there's some concepts of trying to create more of a complete grid in this area where it's just not just a turnaround for buses, but an actual street that works like a street as well.
Do we have an actual count on the people that go down to that station? I mean, I've gone to, sat in One Barrel and had dinner in there, and that's where all the buses come out. They go in and out of there. And those big articulated buses, they'll have like 5 people on them. You got like 10, not even 10% filling capacity on those things. It's, do we have an actual count on the people that go through that station?
It's possible we could get that, but I don't have, I couldn't give you a figure right now.
The Englewood station is the end of the line for some of those buses. So when they leave Englewood station, they might not have very many people on them. But if you ride the Zero bus uptown, towards downtown, it fills up and people, it's standing room only by the time you get to downtown. And that's with pretty close,
Standing room, what time of day is that?
Look, I mean, throughout the day, it's a very popular bus line. So when you're seeing those buses leave from Englewood, that isn't the, only people that ride the bus. So just keep that in mind.
I've sat there for 2 hours watching buses go in and out of Englewood Parkway, and I've never seen a bus that's quarter full.
I think that's his point, is that they fill up and empty out elsewhere. So you have to design it for the full capacity along the route. You can't say that everyone has to get off and get on at one spot.
But they're going from downtown to Highlands Ranch.
Right, but half those people might get off at different stops along the way, but you can't have a bus that just goes point A to point A and everyone gets on there and gets off there. So I see your point. It looks weird, but to Noah's point, they are full to some capacity.
And, yes, it's sad, but I think there's going to be a commitment to try to turn that around. And I think eventually it will turn around. But yes, it might take quite a number of years and a lot of effort. Potential new Civic Center building in the 24-hour fitness building. Potential downsizing of city office footprint. It might be beneficial for cost savings and more flexibility in redeveloping the site. But the only thing that the city has done so far is they've done a survey of our space, and they have not done any investigation at that 24-hour fitness building. So that's where we're at. But that's something that will probably need to be determined sooner rather than later so that you can go forward with your redevelopment plan, whether that means this building stays or goes.
So 24-hour fitness is in the new Englewood plan, right? Correct?
The new Englewood plan. I mean,
the new Englewood, the
it's potentially
land purchasing right now.
The land underneath there is owned by the city, so yes, it's potentially in play.
And City Center is not.
The Civic Center is also owned by the city of Englewood, and it's in play as well. But these are decisions that the city will make. So the city is in control. The developer's not in control.
So the new Englewood that I'm talking about is 24-hour fitness and Harbor Freight and the old Office Depot, whatever it was there in Ross. those are in the group, right?
They own the buildings, but they do not own the land underneath.
Inglewood owns the land.
So Inglewood is in a very strong position to make sure that what the city wants to see happens, and so the city's in a very strong position that way.
So they could tear 24-hour fitness down any minute now. Whenever they get this deal done, they can tear down 24-hour fitness because they own the building.
Well, I'm not sure if this is really the venue to discuss these details. I think you might want to maybe there should be a study session with Dan Paremba, maybe, to really talk about those things. They're pretty complex. So I'm going to pass on that.
Would it be fair to say it's in negotiation? There's nothing set in stone with the city center?
Yes. There's also some potential geotechnical and environmental issues that the city will need to look at as well. There's suspected fill and plume issues potentially here, where the fills materials that were used prior to even Cinderella City being built may not be sufficient to fully support the developments that we are contemplating. And there may actually be even some plume issues from across the street in terms of some of those auto uses. So those are some things that we need to investigate as well. And then Piazza redesign. The redevelopment offers an opportunity to redesign this Piazza space to be more people-friendly, including more turf and landscaping and less concrete. So that's something in some of the charrette processes that we did a couple years ago with City Council. That is kind of the direction we were kind of hearing, is that they want this to be more park-like, less roadway, more friendly to city gatherings. Then we need to work with the new owners on conceptual site planning, opportunity to engage the new owner entity on conceptual designs for retail and housing projects. And financial planning. The redevelopment will require the largest single infusion of Downtown Development Authority tax increment financing to make all that infrastructure happen. Potentially $70 million or something like that. And so needs to be a lot of planning around that too, because obviously the Downtown Development Authority doesn't want to shoot all of their bullets on one project in one place. And I believe that concludes the presentation. At this point, the floor is open to P&Z in terms of if they have ideas of other strategies, or if in that strategy list they believe that there's something that was listed as priority 2 or 3 that you feel should be moved up. Or is there something in this priority 1 list that you just think we're missing the mark and that's not that important right now?
Can you point to where the priorities are shown? I'm missing the 1, 2, and 3 piece.
It's starting on page 20 of the packet of the staff report.
E8?
That is 20. I've got 20 of 49. So if you click on just the staff report, if you go to the agenda and click staff report under item number 5.
It's 17 of 58 if you're looking at the
full packet.
Full packet.
Oh, I've got 29 of 458. It says draft comp plan update strategy chart.
Sorry, yeah, there's two tables. The
Yeah.
one with the priority starts on 29. Thank you.
John, my only comment would be on those priorities. It feels like we've got a lot of these kind of pushed into number one priority, and the fear there is that if you have all these number one priorities, how do you even split? How do you?
So you'd like to dial back on the ones?
Well, I would say to look at a number of options there, like maybe there's a 1 through 4 or a 1 through 5 that might give an opportunity to split those ones into another step lower. Just a thought there.
It's a good thought.
Yeah.
I think some of them could probably be combined too. I mean, especially like the city center redevelopment, like not, if all of those pieces are essentially required to move forward with the city center redevelopment, then you don't really need like 7 different priority ones, right? It's all just like the city center redevelopment strategy is what we need, right? And it would include those pieces within it. So I think combining some of them might be another way to focus a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron, can I ask you, sorry, Chair Martinez, can I ask you a question on your comment? Would you like to see something, I think John had a slide in there with an image that had like
Impact versus
like a
effort.
high cost,
Yeah.
Something like that, something where we can identify things that might be of a lower cost, but have a higher impact, or low cost, low impact.
Like another column, just kind of, really that should be what's part of the thing that's driving what number you pick, right? You want the low effort, high impact first, or low cost.
Or maybe
high
that's
impact
low
first.
effort, high impact,
Yeah.
rather than low cost. Because if we don't know what we're going to do quite yet, we may not know what the cost is, but we can certainly tell you what the effort is on our behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's always helpful in setting priorities, of doing an analysis like that. There's a number of different ways to do it. That's one of them. I think that's super helpful. Also considering which of these are contingent or fall in a linear order after other ones. That's not really explained here, but certainly some of these, kind of like Noah mentioned, some of these can't happen until another one's finished, right? So some consideration for that.
Where would we get more information about some of the things that are like 3s? Like your presentation really focused on those things that you had as 1s. So like do all of these small area plans exist currently, or they are to be developed? And then these other strategic plans also to be developed. So, it's just hard to say without understanding a little bit more about, kind of what they mean and what would go into them. So I'd just be interested to know kind of more about what some of these other things that are lower on the list are, not necessarily spending time altogether, but, just to kind of have a little bit more depth on what went into creating the list.
Well, thank you. Yes, and so I'm going to have to pivot towards city council next, and because I will have to probably provide a broader viewpoint on all that stuff for them. So stay tuned and look for council study session memos on this, and maybe that'll give you that depth that you're looking for.
I think this is sort of overlaid with the last couple of comments, but I was recalling with the parks improvement, there was sort of these different menu options of bucket 1, 2, and 3, different dollars associated with each option. Is it possible that, like these guys said, there's some of these things that might benefit from happening at the same time, or they're sort of directly involved with one another? Is it possible to sift through these 1, 2s, and 3s and figure out, are there places where there's a handful of them that have direct overlay where it would make sense to do them all at once? So rather than saying, well, this is a priority 3, we're not going to touch it, but that it's happening right next to it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So I think it might help people absorb, similar to like the small area plans, just understanding these 5 or 6 different various projects that all are happening in this, 2-block radius, what are those things?
Also on the small area plans, I mean, there's 13 of them described in here, and many of them are lower priority. I would almost suggest like just collapsing those all into like future small area plans. Somebody might really be attached to, I want to see a small area plan for the golf course, and that's like the lowest priority. I would just put that as a list of, potential future SAPs and really focus on the ones that are high priority.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments for John? Thank you. This is a lot of great work. This is very thorough. Yeah, thank you for this, John.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we go to staff's choice.
I don't necessarily have anything for you this evening. What I will say is that some of the policies that were discussed the last time that you all met with John will be online for another survey. So we're hoping to get the same kind of turnout that we got with our first online survey, which was pretty good for this type of work. So that's really all I've got right now.
And those surveys go out, is there just for the like a newsletter mailing list or?
There'll be social media posts, and then Nancy emails about 4,000 people on our mailing list. So we inundate folks as much as we can in hopes to get some responses. But I think we're between 200 and 300 responses on our last one. We had a pretty good turnout.
That's great. Could you just send us a link to that mailing list to make sure that we all have access to get on that list?
I send it to all the boards and commissions.
Okay, great. No,
so you should get it.
Perfect.
Let me know if you don't.
Thanks.
It'll probably go out in the next week, within the next week, right, Brian?
Yeah, I think we're trying to post it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it'll be up for about 2 weeks, and then we'll pull it down so that we can provide any more info to council the next round.
Great. Thanks. Attorney's choice.
I don't have anything for you all tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. Commissioner's choice. Let's start on Eric's side, and we'll go this way.
I don't have anything further tonight. Thank you.
I was riding my bike today on the South Platte River Trail by Waste Management, and there was an exorbitant amount of plastic bags in the river, and it just really bothered me. So I noted when I saw it that I wanted to mention it at this opportunity. I don't know what the answer is, higher, more protected fences or just get, but the city needs to check in with Waste Management about what they're doing to control waste that's going over the fence and into the river, because there were probably hundreds of plastic bags in the river today. So it's too much. The wind has been so high, yeah, but they've got to be prepared for that, right? So just something I wanted to note.
Great segue. So April 26, 2025 is the South Platte Renew River Cleanup. Please sign up. Mel England, our sustainabilities coordinator, definitely love all the help she can get.
Let's get Waste Management signed
Yes,
up.
like, are they paying? They should pay for it.
Do we, is that something like a citizen would report on the app or the, like for code enforcement or?
I don't necessarily know where it would go, but you could submit it through Inglefix.
Mm-hmm.
If you see anything along those lines, submit it through Inglefix, and it gets routed to the appropriate department.
I'd love to see some signage along the trail. Like if you see trash here, like submit it.
I mean,
that's for you guys, but yeah.
I mean but honestly, Inglefix, I'd reported something in Denver when I lived there for just a giant pothole, but I had never even heard of Inglefix, and I've lived here for 10 years. So signage to make citizens aware that they can report stuff that when I found a heroin needle in my alley, I cleaned it up instead of calling somebody, but like, it'd be nice to know.
Yeah. Right. I don't have anything. Again, great presentation. This is a big project for the comp plan, so thank you, staff, John and Brian, and all the team, I'm sure, that went into this. It's a lot of info and it takes a while to wade through it, so thank you. Brenda.
Yeah, since we're on the topic, waste management, part of their condition of getting that PUD is they agreed not to use that parking lot in Centennial Park for their employees, and they have continued to use it. And I did report that to Engelfick. So I'll end that with that. And yes, thank you, John, for all your hard work, everybody's hard work. Thank you very much.
Nothing. Thank you for your time.
Michelle.
I don't have anything, but yeah, just to echo both Brenda's and Aaron's comments, this is an enormous amount of work of trying to put some sort of structure and, like you said, priorities and things like that on something that's it's very hard to measure. So yeah, it is an enormous amount of work, and thank you very much.
Yeah, this is it is a lot of information, and I personally don't like to give in to developers myself. The city is the city as it is now. It's fine now. It doesn't really need to be changing. The density of the city is 2,000 higher. It's like 5,000, and Littleton is like 3,000. Denver is 4,000. It's the highest density in the Front Range. So, I mean, increasing density, you were talking about that. I don't really see the purpose in it. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
All right. Thank you, everybody. With that, we adjourn. Thanks.